I just don't care anymore. Oftentimes we can find ourselves going through life and going through periods where we find it hard to be caring about other people in life. And I don't mean, the need to take occasional break or rest at the end of a day or vacation or whatever. I mean going through periods where we really don't care about the well-being and the outcome of the lives of other people. When that's happening, that's really something we want to work on. We want to overcome that. You want to be a person who does care about others. You want to be a person who is seeking to better the life of other people, to be a positive impact in their lives. And throughout your life, God's called you to be that positive impact and to be that person who cares. For example, in Galatians chapter 6, we read God saying this: bear one another's burdens. Bear one another's burdens, and thereby fulfill the law of Christ. You can see how important it really is to be a person who cares about others, who is willing and desiring to bear others' burdens. When Cain slew Abel, God came to Cain and he said, "Where's Abel?" And Abel asked this question of God. He said, "Am I my brother's keeper?" It's interesting that in the way that he asked the question, the fact that he asked the question, he expected the answer to be, "No, I'm not my brother's keeper. Why are you asking me where he is?" But the truth is, if we ask that question, "Am I my brother's keeper?" according to Scripture, the answer is yes. We are meant to be our brother's keeper. We are meant to be helping in the lives of other people. We're meant to be bearing their burdens. We are meant to be people who care. If we find ourselves not caring about others, we want to seek to change that. There's an account one day of a store owner who put a sign outside his store that said, "Beware of dog." A customer went into the store, and the whole time that he is shopping, he's thinking, well, I wonder if I'm going to see this dog that I'm supposed to be aware of. Well, as he's shopping, he almost trips over something. So he looks down and he sees this basset hound just laying there. And so when he goes to the clerk to pay for the items that he is going to buy, he says to the clerk, "Is that basset hound the one laying there? Is that the dog I'm supposed to beware of? Because it doesn't sound like that dog or seem like that dog could hurt anyone." And the store owner said, "Yep, that's the dog that we have the sign for. It's not for your safety. It's because people were always tripping over the dog." In the same way, we don't want to be people who don't notice others, who just trip over them, instead of going through life caring for them. So here are 3 things to bear in mind, to put into your heart whenever you're tempted to be someone who doesn't really care about the outcome of other people's lives. First, always bear in mind how valuable other people are, how important they are and their life is to God. And think about the fact that God cares deeply about them, cares deeply about the outcome of their life, and is always seeking to affect the outcome of their life in a way that would be a blessing to them, in a way that would be so that they get His will and all that He desires for their life. When you think of that, when you think of how important people are, how important they are to God, how valuable they are, the last thing we should be doing is not really caring about them. You might remember a day when contact lenses used to be like you would wear the same lens for like a year and the lenses would be like $300 a pair or something like that. This goes way back. Things have changed. But a little story arose out of that one day when A teenage boy lost one of his contact lenses on the ground. You know, $150, a contact lens on the ground. Well, he starts looking for it, and his mother starts looking for it. Now, the teenager, he's kind of looking hard for it, but the mother, she's on her hands and knees, really looking. Finally, the mother finds the contact lens. The teenage boy looks at his mom and says, "You know, I was looking pretty hard too. How come I couldn't find it?" And the mom said, "Very simple. You were looking for just a little piece of plastic. I was looking for $150. She realized the value more than he did of what they were looking for, of the outcome of the search. In the same way, when we look at other people and we realize how valuable they are, how important the outcome of their life is, then we're going to go at our life with them, our relationship to them, the way we think about them very differently. If you're finding yourself not caring about others, recognize, raise up how much you can see is their value and the value of their life. So in the scriptures, we read this wonderful verse in Luke 15, where it says, "What woman, if she has 10 silver coins and loses one coin, does not light a lamp and sweep the house and search carefully until she finds it?" The scriptures are saying, if you lost a valuable thing, look how you would be. Look at the effort you would put in to finding it. In the same way, if you realize how valuable people are, let that be reflected in how much you care and the effort you put in to blessing and changing the outcome of their life. We find this scripture as well in Leviticus 19:18, where it says, "Love your neighbor as yourself." One thing that can always help us see how valuable others are is when we look at our own life and we realize just how valuable we treat our own life, just how valuable we know we are to God. So the scriptures say, love your neighbor as yourself. As you can see your own value, see it in other people. And just as you then care about your own life, have that same care when it comes to the life of others. Here's a second thing to think about when you're finding yourself not caring. Realize that a lot of the things that we do care about really aren't that important. So what's happened is the things we ought to care about, like other people, the value of them is going down in our heart, whereas the value of a lot of other things goes up in our heart. One way to change that then is to realize that a lot of the things that we may value so much aren't so valuable, and then to let the value of the things that really matter, like the other people that God places in our paths, do matter an awful lot. There's a story about two people in England years ago. One woman was known as the best dressed woman in all of Europe, and she died. When she died, it was written of her this way: she left almost 1,000 changes of clothes, but with those clothes, she had worn the same unseeing eyes, the same deaf ears, the same enameled, painted face. In other words, as she was written about, she valued her outward appearance, had all those changes of clothes, but had deaf ears and unseeing eyes to others. So one biographer juxtaposed her life with another person's life, and the other person's life was William Booth. And William Booth was the founder of the Salvation Army. And he always wore the very same thing, William Booth did. He didn't have 1,000 changes of clothes. He wasn't the best dressed person in Europe. He had one outfit, it said. And whenever you saw a picture of him, a painting of him, it would be the same one blue suit and red collar on the coat. But this is what was said of William Booth in contrast to the best dressed person in Europe. It was said, he had but one outfit, but he lived in 1,000 lives. Think about that. He had but one outfit, but he lived in 1,000 lives. He didn't have deaf ears. He didn't have unseeing eyes. Instead, by valuing other people and being in their life and blessing them for the many ways that he did that, he was in 1,000 lives. In essence, the comparison wants you to ask, would you rather have 1,000 outfits or impact 1,000 lives? What really matters? Is it what you wear? Is it what you have? Or is it in who you impact? So the scriptures say, understand it very clearly. It's not what you wear. That shouldn't be so important. It should be who you're impacting. And we read, for example, then, in Matthew chapter 6, for this reason I say to you, do not be worried about your life as to what you will eat or what you will drink, nor for your body as to what you will put on. Those things don't matter in comparison to the impact you can have on the life of other people. If we're not caring about others, maybe it is that we're caring about some other things way too much. In Philippians chapter 2, Paul says this, make my joy complete by being of the same mind, maintaining the same love, united in spirit, intent on one purpose. Paul was saying, my joy is complete when things are going well for you. We want to have that same sense where the joy, when things go well for others, there's a joy in us because that's what really matters to us. Because we know the value of others in their lives and the not so valuable of value in a lot of other things that we can hold way too high. A third way to make a change when we're not caring about other people is just to realize how much God has changed our life, how much He's done for us, how much He's doing for us, how much He will do for us. When we look at the transformation of our own life as a result of God, we should want that same transformation in the life of other people, in whatever part God would have us play in those results. Years ago, there was a missionary who was in China, and he was an eye surgeon. And one day, he removed cataracts from a blind man and enabled the blind man to see again. This is what the blind man did after he was cured of blindness. He went off and found 48 of his friends who were also blind. They lived far and away, some of them, but he got them all to come to this doctor. And the way he got them to come was he led them all by rope as far as, some of them as far as 250 miles away from the doctor. After he was cured of blindness, the next thing this doctor knew was that that man who could now see went far and wide, found 48 of his friends, and brought them all to the doctor to be healed as well. Shouldn't that be our mentality too? We have been given new sight, new spiritual vision from God. We have been God has caused us to see again. Shouldn't we want that same thing for everybody else? Shouldn't we care about those who are spiritually blind? Shouldn't we want to lead them by hook or by crook or by rope to the great physician? The scriptures say we should. If you've been healed, if your life has been lifted up from the pit, then, and you can now see, then let it be that you want other people to have that same thing going on in their life. So the opposite of caring, you're saying, I want them to see. I want their life to be lifted up. The scriptures say this in John chapter 9. One man who was cured of blindness said, though I was blind, now I see. If you can say that in your own life, though I was blind to the things of God, but now I see, then it ought to be that we go out and want others to be able to say the same thing. And then we read in Psalm 193, God redeems your life from the pit. We can all remember a time, if we're a believer, when our life was really in a pit. But God lifted us out. He took us from a pit and has lifted us and raised us up on high with Him. And if God has taken your life from a pit and raised you up on high with Him, then you want to go out and you want to help other people out of the pit as well. When you're feeling like you just don't care about others, remember what God has done for you and want that for others. So that store owner, he had to put up a sign that said, "Beware of dog," so that people wouldn't trip over the dog. Live a life where you don't trip over others because you're not noticing them. Live a life where you're not needing a sign that says, "Beware." Instead, you're aware. You're aware of others. You're aware of their value. You're aware of that maybe other things are held too high in value and you seek to change that. You're aware of what God has done for you in your life, so that the last thing you're doing is not noticing others. Instead, you're caring deeply about them. You're noticing them, you're noticing their needs, and you really do care. The truth is, we are all meant to be our brother's keeper. So glad you were with us today, and so glad you're with us for each of these midweek devotionals. I hope these stories touch your life as they have touched my life whenever I first found out about them, read about them, and saw them. God uses illustrations. Jesus always used illustrations to bring truth to life. I hope these stories are bringing truth to life. And I hope that you're seeing all the questions that we're answering, the top 50 questions ever asked about Christianity, published every Sunday. So glad you're with us. Hit the subscribe button, join this community, and like the videos if you like them, comment, and be an active part of our community. Look for all the next videos and share them. And remember, for every question, there's always an answer.